if you don't know this. So, welcome, Intimate Visual Learners Study Club. This is our third session, which is exciting. Yeah, today, I just wanna ask before we get started, how did you guys feel with this massive paper to read? How did you like the structure? How did you perceive everything? Like, was it okay? Like, did everything become eventually letter soup? Like, tell me, please.
Well, if I may start.
Yes,
yeah, sure.
Jutta, of course.
So I really liked the article, and it was, well, I have to say, quite easy for me to understand it, because there were so many connections to my background, which, as you might know, is in economics. And, 3/4 of the literature that was cited in this article was already known by me due to my profession. So it was easy for me to dip into the text, and I hope I got the main ideas. Well, one last sentence maybe. For me, the most valuable thing has been the table number 3, where you really find the connection between micro, macro, and macro level, and the objectives, or at least the topics that have to be discussed if we're talking about crypto economic systems.
Yeah, got you. Anyone else who wants to comment before we officially start? Are you guys good and want to save it for the discussion? I see you guys want to save it for the discussion. Okay, that's totally fine. Rohan?
No, do we need any introductions? I think everyone's been here before, right?
I think NOB is new. Alotea is new. I think we should do a quick intro. I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna move over to that section. Sorry. Oops. And now I get rid of this. Okay.
A random plug.
Okie dokie. So yeah, today's agenda. So this is session number 3. We're gonna disclose quickly the agenda. We're gonna go through the people that haven't had the time yet to introduce themselves. And I'm Stella.
I'm Roro.
He is Roro. And we're kind of like your study club hosts. First, so today was all about the paper from Sherman and Michael Zarkham. And we're gonna go through it in like little sections. So first, talking about the definition of crypto economics they are giving us. Then crypto economics through a kaleidoscope, which is essentially putting on the different perspectives, or like I like to call it lenses. Tokens as an atomic unit, discussion about the paper. So this is when you're free to just spill the beans and tell us everything you thought about it. And then we will quickly go through, there were actually not a lot of exam questions, but we will go through them. And then we will talk about what to do for next week. So that's kind of like the agenda. Also, be aware, this session will be recorded, right? That's the thing. And yeah, Rohan, you take this part.
Okay, sure. Okay, so basically, everyone out here pretty much has introduced themselves. I think NOB, do you want to turn on your mic if you can? You can like go through the slide. I mean, you can follow the instructions in the slide, or you can just introduce what your name is, like where you're from if you're comfortable, what's your background, etc.
Hello everyone, NOB. Okay, I was dragged here to the visual learning study group by Chris. So I'm just here to check out what it's all about.
Oh, nice.
That's
okay.
quite all right.
And Alatia, is that how I pronounce your name?
Yeah, Alicia.
Alicia.
Hi, I'm Alicia. I'm Moo. Actually, Alicia's just my whatever Discord handle.
Okay.
missed the last two sessions, and I also have not had the time to do the reading for this session, but I wanted to join in as a fly on the wall, and hopefully I can catch up. My background is in philosophy, politics, and economics, and I've spent the last 10 years actually working in the digital rights tech space, and then learnt to code, and now I'm working on a social key recovery protocol that I'm interested, and that's kind of like one implementation of that we have been working on is within the Ethereum ecosystem. Although most of the implementations we've been working on have been in the digital rights space. So that obviously got me interested in this space, and because of my background, I think token engineering just appeals to me as like a way of understanding what's possible.
Oh, that's a very cool background. And even if you haven't studied, at least we'll try our best to like give a summary of what we understood from the paper, and you could go ahead and read it later. Also, on a Notion page, there's like a really good, the summary of the previous, sessions, and all the reading material is all linked there. So you can actually just even go through the recordings of the previous sessions.
Yeah, maybe just quickly gonna show this again, right? So here on the last one on the full list is our little study club. And so if you go on there, if you're not familiar with Discord, you have this pin button up here. And you click on that and it will show you all the pinned things, right? It's actually not that much. And if you scroll all the way down, you will see all the former sessions are being linked to here, right? This is the module, this is the Notion page. So you can just click jump and then it goes all the way up to those different links. So this is where, this is the most easiest form of getting access to all the information so far. Hope that made sense.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel, for posting this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, what is where is that Notion page? I can't see it, or I've missed it somewhere.
Oh, so do you see this last channel in all of the study clubs? Like, do you see my screen? I'm sharing my screen.
No, I don't.
What is on your screen is like me big, and then there's like a ton of small ones. Like, what's your perspective that you have right
It's all small ones. I've got all tiles. Everyone is a tile.
Okay, do you see the one tile that has multiple tiles?
There'll be a watch button somewhere that you should click.
Watch stream.
Sure.
It's saying somewhere.
Okay. I need to click the watch stream. Okay.
But also, Rachel was so kind to put the Notion link directly for you in the side chat. Right? So the side chat can be found up here. It's like this little speech bubble.
Thank you.
And then it's here.
Yeah.
You see it?
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, got it.
No trouble. We know Discord is not familiar for everyone, so this is why I brought this up. And and then we have this channel, Visual Learner Study Club. And on this pin button up here, and you'll scroll all the way down, you get to this post. It's one of the first posts that I made. And if you click on jump, it leads you to all the important links. Yeah?
Okay, let's get started. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's move on. Okay. So, this is yours.
Okay. Okay. So, so basically, from my read of the paper, I think the paper itself aimed to be a foundation for research in this domain, for future research. It kind of directs and outlines the major frameworks and lenses that are being used, that are being borrowed from and used in token engineering, borrowed from other fields basically. And since this field is necessarily interdisciplinary, they are trying to build a sort of common vocabulary between these fields. I think that was what the paper, abstract and introduction, was about for me. And this quote really stood out to me. Cryptoeconomics is a emerging field of economic coordination games. in cryptographically secured peer-to-peer networks. We can, I think, move to the next one. I think through the lenses, we'll actually go deeper into every section of these words also.
Also, maybe good to mention the article we are speaking about today, just for the guys who haven't been here last time, is called Foundations of Cryptoeconomic Systems, and it was written by Sherman, I hope I pronounce her correctly, Washmir, and Michael Zargham, who've been, doing a lot of research collaboratively, as far as I understood. And this is the article we're talking about today, just for everyone who isn't aware. Okay, so this is the definition they give us, and then they go through those different perspectives. And for us to remember this a little bit more visually, we are calling them lenses. We think it kind of is almost like using a kaleidoscope and carefully turning a kaleidoscope bit by bit, in a like circular rotation, and looking at the same thing, just getting like an exciting image every time you turn the kaleidoscope slightly, right? For us, this was like the most relatable, I guess, a visual for that. Yeah, you want to take the rest of this?
All right. So we basically break down. I think we are taking the paper down through these lenses and trying to at least understand what they were trying to say, why these lenses are important within the crypto economic system. I think the next one, I think I'm going to spend a lot of time on the complex systems one, so we can move on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so first is complex systems, right? Second is interdisciplinary lens, which I feel very strong about. Then institutional economics, evolution of cooperation, which is also very exciting. And I think we found a great example, thanks to Rojo. Multi-scale lens and network science lens. Okay, so here you go. This is your...
Okay, so complex systems for me, so I actually studied physics, and this was one of the courses we had, not complex systems as such, but I studied chaos theory and nonlinear dynamics. And the thing is, a couple of things are very important from that field to bring here, because basically it's very interesting that in a lot of fields in physics too, there are a lot of we know everything about the system, in the sense that we know the rules, we know the state of the system, we know absolutely everything. But even in simple systems, they become extremely hard to predict in the future, like weather, for example. Like even if you know every particle's position, a slight difference in the initial conditions will completely change how the system evolves. And that system is a chaotic system, majorly because it has these features of like emergence, like non-linearity, adaptation, spontaneous order, and feedback loops. These are the certain properties that you constantly see in chaotic systems. So complex systems, in some sense, is a field that's built on chaos theory. And the thing is, like, systems theory in general helps us a lot in cryptoeconomic systems, because they help us define these systems from the structure, purpose, functions, boundaries, and interdependencies of the environment. Like we can actually break the system down into these domains and actually use it to then start predicting the behavior of agents. How would you imagine the system to evolve, or the other way around? So complex systems, they differ from other systems mainly because it's very hard to infer how the system will change based on how the initial the actors themselves behave. Like it's hard to predict what's going to happen. And there are two demonstrations that actually go through it very well. Like the first one is the complexity explained, which I urge everyone to go through. Like, can we open it?
Can I?
Yeah.
Can
Yeah,
I?
yeah.
I'm so excited myself, sorry.
Yeah, so this is a beautiful visual explanation of every phenomena that you see in complex science in general. So if you go down, you see this one you liked, yes, Stella? You can explain this one.
Is this the one that I like? Is this the
the interactive one? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I can just... Can you guys see this? I probably have to Like,
Yeah, now it's working better. I think, yeah, this is working.
This text is small.
I mean, text you can go through independently, but actually, if you go down, the parts that I really think are important to understand are emergence, like the next phenomena, where you have, something like this. So you have these agents, let's say they are birds or whatever you call it, right? Like birds or tadpoles or whatever. And you start seeing certain structures evolve, even though you can't predict what an individual agent is going to do. You can kind of see these worlds evolve over time. And that happens in weather too, like in the sense that we can't predict exactly when it's going to rain the next year, but we can predict approximately during monsoons the rains are going to come, like in India, for example. So it's pretty interesting. Like if you go down, like there are other features within chaotic systems where it's very hard to predict what individuals will do, but you can see overall. Oh, this is again very, very important to understand that there are two pendulums that were left with slight differences in the initial conditions, and these double pendulums completely change over time. Like it's very hard to predict what one is going to do if you don't have the initial conditions exact to the T. So only theoretically you can know what the pendulum is going to do in a certain. Both of their behaviors are completely different, and that's also a very important property of complex systems. Self-organization is a property. Again, like it is even the first one we saw that you see these organization behavior, like what do you say, like large-scale pattern of emergence that you start seeing over time. But yeah, I urge you all to go through this page, like after the slides are given to you all. Like it explains all of these things very, very visually, and also at the end of the day, it's crucial for us to understand, because when we are modeling systems, we need to understand that these are the fundamental characteristics of the systems we are modeling. Like they are chaotic and they're complex. We can actually go to the other one also. Like even another one that we found was a game of life. I think many people will know this. This is basically, again, very, very, very simple rules of whether a cell should be alive or dead. But when you press play, like you can see very complicated like patterns emerge. And if you see this pattern, which is like, it seems like there's an emergent behavior of the object moving. But if you stop and reset it, for example, and if we reset and if we just change one or two like cells here and there, just change the initial condition a little bit, the kind of patterns that will evolve might be completely different. Like maybe you added the wrong. Oh no, yeah, you can see like the entire pattern kind of within a couple of within a couple of levels it completely changed. And that's the thing, like initial conditions are very important to understand in complex systems. Okay, let's go back to them. But yeah, Game of Life is also a very interesting tool to just play around with. It's a field of math also in some sense. We can move to the next one.
And the next one is something that I feel very excited about in design. If you do research, you're usually inquired to look beyond your own borders, right? Design is essentially always borrowing from somewhere else. Like design just by itself is honestly nothing, right? We keep borrowing from all of those different fields and sources of inspiration. And so interdisciplinary lens is actually a little bit close to that, which made me feel very excited. And they say that it's appropriate to use this lens if your research involves complex systems, because complex systems can usually not be handled just by one discipline. Like disciplines are foundational and they are important to have, right? Like you could not engineer like a token without being an engineer at some point. You know, this is like, it makes sense, right? This is also why we need to learn coding. It's not so that we can always deploy what we've been thinking of, but it is a tool it's a hard skill that we need. And but they say like if you really want to think this through, like it's actually inadequate to just use one discipline or two disciplines and be like, done, I've thought this through, right? They want us to look through different lenses to actually be able to build and think a complex system. And later on, when we get to the macro, meso, and micro levels, it's also very interesting that they start going from macro to micro instead of building small and going big, right? So that there's reasoning. And so there are seven steps in this research process. I can list them if you want, but you have read them. And I think they make a lot of sense, right? They go from like very much analyzing the different disciplines and which make sense in the context of your specific, tokenized project or crypto economic system. And then, until the point of, okay, what are actually the disciplines and the research points that we should really get involved into whatever we are building. And for relevant fields that they have already assigned, in a sense, you can also refer to the crypto economic flower. I'm sure you've seen that. And in a sense, all of this is good and fine, but they also bring up that, there are two important factors. It's going to take time and effort. And we all kind of know that, time is a rare good these days, and especially in a fast space like Web3, right? Time is like always of the essence. So I think, and I would like to add that, I also think we need tools. And my favorite example for this is the Rosetta Stone, and I'm sure everyone knows it, but just for the sake of showing it, right? It's this incredible piece of culture, essentially, and there's a great article on it on Google Arts and Culture about this stone that's like so old, but it has the same text essentially written in 3 ancient languages to make stuff more accessible, right? And to inform more people about whatever really is written on there. And I think it's important to think of it like this. So one thing that came to my mind is we cannot keep building tools without keeping educating people on those tools, right? But then also when it comes to token engineering itself, I think we need tools to help us synthesize this kind of research, because borrowing from a lot of different disciplines also means that it just needs sometimes maybe too much time and too much effort. So we also need tools that help us synthesize research, honestly. So I would like to add that actually to the article if I could, but obviously I can't. It's already been written and published. Okay, next lens is crypto economics institutional and economic lens. So what they are talking about is institutional economics is a subset of economics intersecting with political science, sociology, history, management science, and cybernetics. So it's already interdisciplinary just by itself. And it defines formal, informal, public versus private institutions. So one of the examples that they name that's really well understood, I guess, from everyone is the internet as an institution. And one of the powers they are bringing up is that, we've seen over the past few years, and also what's been happening in this space. I mean, look at us. We're literally from everywhere, right, coming together for this one specific goal. So it means that, the idea of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, is actually, it's very strong, it's very powerful. It's like its own force of democracy in a sense. And I really like that they are bringing that up. And also, I kept actually comparing DAOs to companies, and I was always like, that's not sufficient. And then I read this article. It's like, they are more resembling nation states than companies, don't they? Because it's just so much more complex and so much more intricate. And something that honestly I discovered yesterday by chance, but it relates to what Rohan said in the first during the first slide. It's the order within chaos, I guess. And really, I found this by chance yesterday. I just thought it was beautiful, so I'm going to share this with you guys. It's, let me try and enlarge this. It's an intersection in Ethiopia without any traffic lights, without anything. And it's working. We're always so worried about, mapping stuff out and making rules for everything. And maybe this tells us, obviously we need rules, but maybe not for everything. Maybe having a common goal, getting safely through this, traffic intersection is good enough. And actually, I've seen this a lot here in Peru. When the
there's also a point that there's a lot of times we tend to over-engineer things. That also, I think, highlights here.
Right?
Yeah.
I think so too. My computer just give it a second. It's loading. Sorry. What's happening?
The screen is loaded though. I can see the cooperation lens one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's dying.
Oh no.
That was in US. Rachel said that with 15 accidents in 5 minutes. In Germany, by the way, too. It's really, it's hilarious. But yeah.
But India's pretty crazy through with rickshaws and everything. It's just like they somehow like I don't know how I've survived so long on the streets. Like.
Yeah, we have those tricycle motos.
Yeah. We call them rickshaws. Yeah.
Yeah, yours are rickshaws. Here they are called motos, just motos.
Okay.
Okie dokie. This is like a shared slide. So I think you're gonna take the part where you demonstrate, right? Or you want to start this? Okay, good. Okay, so the next lens is evolution of cooperation lens. It kind of like almost relates a little bit to the last lens, right? I also think this is why they structured the paper the way they did. That, you know, like each lens is kind of building up on the next one, I felt, but maybe this was just a personal feeling. So coordination is not only possible with selfish actors. I think that was like a really strong one to point out, because we've been talking a lot about the Bitcoin model, right? And how it's secured essentially by selfishness. And they are pointing out that, you know, there has been a lot of research that actually, that says that's actually factually wrong, right? Like, it is possible to build with that, but it's not the only possibility. And I think we are encouraged to rethink that part as well, right? So we can think, and we should think about selfish actors, very obviously, right? Because otherwise, you know, just reminding of the DAO hack, you know? But I think they want to encourage us also to think beyond that lens. And cooperation evolves as seen in Iterated Prisoner's Dilemma. Not sure how many of you have watched Squid Game or Alice in Borderland. I'm actually more Alice of Borderland fan, but it's like if you look at the games they are playing, right? It's like it makes you question, like, hey, how would I do this? And going through it with knowing about the prisoner's dilemma in your mind actually gives this whole series a new twist. So I recommend watching it with that kind of notion in your mind. Cryptoeconomic systems can't be based on the idea of selfish actors alone. They're making this point twice, so I thought we should bring it up twice. And it helps to engineer incentives that make cooperative norms resistant to invasion by selfish ones. So I guess it's a back and forth, but who better to show this than our very own Roro?
But can we do it on your thing only? Because otherwise we will have to switch, yeah. I want to make a couple of points though, like which is that the main thing is that even under the assumption of complete rational, selfish, humans, even with that assumption, cooperation can evolve, is the point of Prisoner's Dilemma and Iterated Prisoner's Dilemma in some sense. So like basically Prisoner's Dilemma is a game theoretic, I think, what do you call it? Like it's a like I don't know how to frame this, but it's basically, and let's say that actually it's too complicated to explain, but we can actually just go through this, go through the presentation itself. Like this is a very beautiful website, by the way, which goes through the evolution of trust, explains how trust can evolve even within completely selfish actors, and why it actually benefits everyone if people cooperate at the end of the day. And can we go next? We can just let's play the game. We should actually, in fact, like I urge everyone to go through this themselves once. Like the entire presentation is beautiful. You can actually see. I mean, if we can just click random buttons to show them that it's the way we can actually go about.
This is us, right? And this is the other player. And the question is, if we cooperate, will this other person also cooperate? So, or will they, will they do something different? So, I think we cooperate.
so everyone benefits from cooperation. Like, it's great. And by the way, it's very important to mention that the way the incentive structure in the middle that you see is laid out actually changes the way people behave. And that's why I think, in some sense, token engineering comes in for us. Like, yeah. And if we cheat, the thing is, you can get the benefit of that particular interaction. You get more money by cheating, but then in the long run, you might suffer. Is the point that I think iterated prisoner's dilemma basically makes. Can we go through the seventh slide? I think the third last or something. Yeah.
Sandbox one, right? Because
yeah, there.
I think it's important to mention that this game shows you different kind of players who play by different rules, and here they are all listed, right? So we had the luxury of kind of playing in our first run with a copycat. So the copycat keeps repeating whatever you do, right? But then the cheater keeps always cheating. The cooperator is always cooperating. The grudger, if you cheat him once, he's gonna fuck you over like for the whole game, right? And I don't remember the detective. What does the detective
I think detective starts with cooperation, then he kind of tries to see whether, like, he'll try to cheat once and see how you behave, and then work with that assumption, like what he finds out, yeah.
Yeah. And anyhow, so on. So what do you want me to do? You want me to put different parameters here?
No, we can just start and show that basically this shows that with this kind of a system, you end up seeing certain actors evolve over time, and people start behaving in a certain way. And you can actually see who's winning. Oh, Copy Kitten won somehow. But yeah, you can actually change it to like more cheaters in the system and stuff like that. So there's a threshold that you realize that when there's only cheaters and, let's say, cooperators, there's a threshold beyond which everybody has to cheat in order to play the game. Yeah, we will share the slides and the list of websites too.
Yeah.
But basically, this was a very important, what do you say? Like, there was a very interesting research that was done, and also like a competition by Axelrod back in like I forgot the year, but you could like put your own strategies in this game, and they would actually play multiple games with different players and see who won at the end. And almost every year, like Tit for Tat was the one that won. Tit for Tat was, they cooperate, they begin with cooperation, and then if you cheat them, then they cheat back. But there are two links in my Notion page which will show, explain this better, and also it's a very insightful and important thing to know when we are building crypto economic systems or any models, I believe, because humans aren't just purely selfish, and even if they are, it's all in the Notion. So even if they are purely selfish, still cooperation can evolve. So we have to take that into account when we are predicting the behavior in our models, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, like what it made me think is we cannot just base our incentive structures on monetary gain. If this is the only value, we would probably not win this game, you know? Like, this is just something that obviously wasn't in the paper. This is something that came to my mind, right?
No, so commons and commons wouldn't work, DAO wouldn't work, the token engine commons, all of these things, the reason they function are not just because of monetary gains. It's also because there are more incentives than just monetary gains for humans, and we have to take that into account. Yeah.
And also all the links, right? You see like in the slides, and I will obviously upload the slides again as well. How these things are highlighted. So just click on them, and you will also be led automatically to and the Notion also. Yeah. Okay, you go, Rohan. Yeah. Take it.
Yeah. Okay. And this was Lutra actually mentioned that this was one of their favorite lens. Something they learned a lot from here. So multi-scale lens is basically, in some sense, like it's a tool used a lot by this thinking tool is used a lot by sociologists and social workers, from what I've read, even economists sometimes. But basically, understanding the emergent properties that are arising from the relationship of agents, processes, and policies. So when you understand that's how your system is functioning, you start realizing that, hey, a multi-scale lens is something that we need. So for example, in economics, we do have macroeconomics, microeconomics. Even for social work, you see it under those lenses like micro, meso, and macro. Basically, one way to visualize it is that policymakers measure phenomena on a macro level. Like, for example, you read GDP, or like you have these measures through which you understand how your system is, on average, how well is it doing. Then you decide based on that, you make a policy that affects on the meso level. So usually corporations or these groups of entities is what it generally affects. And then it trickles down to basically the micro agents who make decisions within these meso level states. So, it changes their behavior, and their behavior changing suddenly changes how the emergent phenomena completely happens. Like, it suddenly changes how the entire system evolves over time, because everyone's behavior changes. So now, when you made rules on the top and you assumed certain behaviors from humans, but when the system completely changed, the incentive landscape changed, and people start behaving differently, and that changes basically the game itself that we are playing in some sense. So it's very interesting to see. Even they gave a bit the example of Bitcoin network within multi-scale feedback, which we can go through in the discussion, I think. But yeah, it's a very important lens to look through all three lenses, like of macro, micro, and micro. Yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question, Rohan?
Yeah.
The whole meso level, is this like, is this something new that's just really emerging due to what we're seeing with, with the emergence of blockchain networks, the whole meso level?
Oh, I don't think so, because even in even in the sociology and social sciences, the way they use it is, from what I understand, they use it in the sense of families or groups are considered meso level. Companies are considered meso level entities. Macro would be nations, and micro would be individuals within those nations. So I'm sure even in economics there are meso economics, but I don't think we hear about it much. But I'm sure there are people who study.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can we move to the next one? You want to add something, Stella? Yeah.
No, you're good.
Okay. Network science lens. Okay, so network science lens also, again, very important thing to understand, because basically network theory and graph theory are extensive fields of math, basically, and they're used heavily in similar fields, like when you compare to crypto economics. Graph theory, for example, is used heavily as a like anytime graph theory is used in social or economic networks, we call it network science. And if you look at social media companies, they use graphs as a data structure to map, like, who is friends with whom and how to traverse those friends. It's a very important tool to actually analyze these systems. So a crypto economic system like a blockchain network is a multi-graph, they call it, because you're kind of, can we open that example? It'll be more visually explainable. So graphs basically have edges and vertices, and you would see the math notation in the paper itself. But one way to see it, it's something like this, like these nodes, like the circles that you see. They are basically, you could model, in our case, you could model it as agents or wallets, or depending on the system you're studying, the connections between them can be labeled. In our case, there are three kinds of labels is what they say, and therefore it's a multi-graph, because we are dealing with miners and accounts, stuff like that. So there are different types of agents within the system. So you need a different color to represent them in some sense, or a different way of representation. And you also need multiple ways through which they interact with each other. Accounts can do something to accounts that they can't do with miners, etc. Like certain interactions you just can't, that is different, yeah. There's a question, could we think of it as citizens demanding change micro? Oh, this is the previous one. We will discuss this. Yeah, so network theory is a very useful tool to understand complex systems, and basically.
Hi Rohan. What's the difference between vertex and an edge?
Okay, I'm not the right person to answer this because I've not studied network theory, but from what I understand is there are multiple words for edges, nodes, and vertices I think are the same thing, but I might be wrong. Maybe there's like a nuanced thing about it. But those are the bubbles that we saw, and the interactions between them we call as vertices. No, wait, I'm getting confused now.
I think
What is there in the paper? Yeah.
maybe we discussed this yesterday if we should bring this
Yeah.
up, right? Because if you model stuff in 3D, you can do it through 3 different things. You have vertices, you have edges, and you have faces, right? So a vertex is one point, right? An edge is something that's connecting point A and B, right? The face
Okay, right.
is, leads at least 3 points and 3 edges to form like a face, right? That's like the minimum. So
edge is the connection between the vertices, right?
yeah,
Yeah, clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sila.
Yeah.
yeah, this is
Yeah.
okay, cool.
But the multi-graph point was something I wanted to highlight, which is that when they mention topology in the paper, it's like they're talking about this in some senses. What I understand, that there are, it's not just one entity and other entity interacting with each other. The interactions have meaning because you could have a transaction, but you could also have like a mining reward, etc. There are different kinds of interactions that happen. So in order to study networks like this, you need multiple kinds of edges and multiple kinds of vertices, and the connections between them are important. Yeah.
Guess what?
Mhm.
My Adobe is crashing again. I'm not sure
Oh,
what's
no.
happening today. I'm so sorry, guys. This is
You have too many things open. Good.
What? I don't. Look at this. This is just tiny. Look at this. Yeah, it's my own fault. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. Okay. So I guess this was were we around slide 12, maybe?
I think so. No, I think 8 or 9. I don't know, maybe not. Because there are intro slides too. Somebody didn't pay.
I think it's because of my Adobe license. Are you serious? I just changed subscriptions. Maybe you're right. Oh, this is frustrating. Oh, such a
Should I try sharing?
No,
Okay, no, it's
we will get there. Don't you worry. I got this, I think.
Mhm.
And then it keeps crashing. I mean,
It's crashing again?
worst case, I can just go on the Figma. It's not
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, we'll.
right.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
This-
This is a little.
This is our behind the scenes of how we make
Yeah,
stuff.
this is definitely our behind the scenes one. So sorry for that. But it will show everything as well. So this is the next slide.
Okay. Is this yours?
I'm not sure if this is mine, or I can take it.
Okay.
So yeah, after going all of the through those different lenses, right? They speak about the tokens as an atomic unit, and so I made this little atomic unit models for you guys, so you remember this, because there were 4 really important points, I think. Tokens represent a part of the state of any cryptoeconomic system, right? And it seems like it's really the element that's gonna either cause the rise or the fall of everything. So this is why we need to think so carefully about it. Tokens can make all socioeconomic activities visible. Asset tokens and asset right tokens represent business and governance systems, right? Purpose-driven tokens are programmed to steer automatic collective actions of autonomous network actors. So all of those things actually represent the whole power structure in a cryptoeconomic system. And this is why, we've been talking so much about ethics, I think, as well, because if we don't get that one right, if we don't make it in a way that it is being used, that it is of more use than beside the monetary use, then, we kind of shoot ourselves in our own leg, I guess. Yeah. And then, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I know actually. I'll take the next one. The next one's good.
Okay. So, this is actually kind of the 4 last chapter, and it's all about unifying perspective on cryptoeconomics. So this is why I made why I bound in the cryptoeconomic flower again, right? Because using those different lenses and using those different perspectives and disciplines and having them entwine, right? They might just represent the key of us building something really solid and self-sustaining, which kind of is the idea, right? We get to this point actually during our next session, where we will be talking about the Web3 sustainability loop. So I think the order of this comes, it's actually quite brilliant, even though, you know, this article don't necessarily, like, it was not written in connection with the article we're discussing next time, but it is about making a self-sustaining tokenized ecosystem, right? And the key will be looking through those different lenses, and I think this is what they have been calling in the article a natural path forward. And then, this is the last slide, it goes towards the different research directions that you could take additionally. This is at least what I understood. You want to take that?
Yeah, and in all of those points itself, like, basically, there's certain points that really like stood out to me. One was that, in some sense, because if we look at tokens as something that determines the state of the system, because so we can actually, and since it's on a blockchain that is readable, every state change is something that's that you can it's open to everybody. In some sense, in the way we design this, we are kind of creating systems where in the Web 2 space, like the data was all this data, etc., was collected by entities that we don't have control over. Like, we don't see the data at all. Here is something that we have control over, the data that we have here. And we can use that to actually give back power to individuals. That was something that I found very interesting. Another thing was that we can real-time steer these economies too, which is something that we couldn't do earlier. We couldn't, like, in some sense, like in earlier economies, you have to wait for the emergent phenomena to show up before you even make an action which changes the system itself. While here you can, in some sense, actively change the system while things are happening. That's why they were talking about cybernetics and how we can real-time steer these economies using token engineering and designing our incentive landscapes. Another thing was that a lot of times we need to realize that counterintuitive outcomes are very common in this space, like in any complex system precisely, and therefore computational methods, and we will have to keep on designing and evolving computational methods to study these systems and improve our understanding on how our effort changes the incentive landscape and the behavior itself and the emergent phenomena with it. There's another, like, a very interesting point about purpose-driven tokens, but we can take this in the discussion type section, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's time. We've been going so much longer over those lenses that we anticipated. I'm sorry, guys. Now it's time that you share all your thoughts and what went on in your heads when you read this? What are the points that maybe you made notes of? I know some of you already shared some stuff here in the chat, so I'm gonna share that screen actually. 0xTO, they brought up again that, you know, this really interesting definition by Mark Lazardem in the intro video, which is basically micro, meso, macro level explained as such, right? So yeah, what did you guys think? Go. Who should I pick? 0xTO. Go for it.
Hello.
Hi. Good morning.
Hey.
Good afternoon for me. But wait, I'm trying to, because I had been taking quite some notes about this one, but I think one of the points that was the most interesting for me is the fact that a complex system is not necessarily just the sum of its subparts, but it can most likely and most of the time be more than that. And so you cannot just like basically define a whole system by its subparts. I don't know how else to say it, but it really resonated with me, and I thought it was really interesting because I guess it also means that it doesn't matter how many projections you're going to make with the tools you're using. It's there is some things that is going to happen only once the whole system has been put together, and so yeah, you cannot basically foresee everything, but what matters most is to actually be able to adjust and have maybe a process to be able to deal with all the uncertainties that will arise, rather than to try to anticipate everything.
also it's very like Michael in general like speaks about basically you can't keep the governance space too large too, because then anything can be changed constantly. So there's a constant battle between how much we should allow the governance take, how much action can government take, and how much should we pre-plan before we launch any system based on this pattern. Yeah.
I think there have been some recently new projects. Some of them haven't even launched yet. That have decided to give like governance decisions different urgency levels, you know, and also different groups are making those decisions. And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at this, right? So we kind of have, I mean, my project is by far not there, right? But I've been trying to do that we have different levels of, you know, contributors, and those different levels are assigned different powers, right? Within their field of expertise, really. So I think that's also important, right? Not everyone can make a decision about a very complex topic, and I'm not talking about, you know, the idea that, you know, other people might be more stupid than others. I'm talking about the fact of time as well. Not everyone has the time to read a proposal that is maybe 20 pages long or 40 pages long, you know? Not everyone has capacity for it. So analyzing your own capacity in a governance structure is often hard, so you make a rule for it, right? I also thought Ratio said something interesting. Could we think of it as citizens demanding change, micro policymakers, passive laws, bills? Ratio, you wanna comment on the two things that you brought up? Also said, can we briefly discuss examples of building against coercion, collusion, and towards positive cooperation? Ratio?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the about like the federal government as far as the micro, meso, and macro. I put like citizens demand change, and then the policymakers, the Congress create the bills, laws, or they pass for laws, and then they have their impact on society, and so that would be the macro. That's what I was getting at there. And then my other question, which I think is a little more interesting on my end anyway, is how do you build a system that's coercion, collusion, basically bad actor proof, but also make it to where it's a cooperative? I mean, I'm sure there are examples, but it's early in the morning here, and like it seems difficult to me. It would seem difficult without some sort of reputation token or some reputation metric to build a system like that. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, depends on what cooperation we are talking about. Does someone else want to take it? They can take it, yeah.
I think Daniel unmuted. Curious?
How dare you say my real name?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I'm just joking. I don't care. So I feel like it bleeds into what I was thinking, and it's almost like what those are, Ratio, is you're identifying objectives and constraints of the system that you want. As to how do you build that into the system, well, then you're trying to define, well, what ways is your system incentivizing the thing that you want and disincentivizing the thing that you don't want? What are the exact mechanics for it? Well, I hope that it's not just one way. Rather, there may be an abundance of possibilities, and some may work better than others. Where we're really at is identifying what ways work best. So it's not really an answer, but it's more of like, well, what you did is you identified some things that you don't want and want in your system.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I have a question. Sorry. How are people understanding objectives and constraints? So if, let's say, objectives are the things that I want to optimize for in my ecosystem, are constraints the things that I want to avoid? Are they the limitations of technology that I run into? How are people looking at and defining constraints in this whole process?
I think there are different levels to it, no? So I think neither of the two that you mentioned are wrong, right? There's also, for example, the one with governance. Like, who do you who do you allow for to vote on certain decisions? Like I think it's like constraints can be used on all of those different levels, and then also constraints like what was it that Trent brought up in one of his articles? He said like, okay, you first start with the building blocks that already exist, but then if you run into the problem of not finding the solution you need, this is when you create maybe another process, and you will run into constraints along that development, obviously too. Maybe it's it's a limit of technology or computing power, or I think it's different things. But Strata was
No, I actually thought differently. I thought like constraints are very clearly the second point that you mentioned. I mean, at least from Trent's like optimization lens perspective, like I thought like constraints always, like from my experience of doing optimization, like we use constraints as something that the system just can't do. So for example, the weight of a person just can't be negative. So I put that as a constraint within my system when I'm modeling it. Like, or the age of a person can't be negative. So I have to put those as constraints when I define my
just as rules, essentially.
yeah
it's rules.
yeah things that your system just can't do before you start modeling. That's how constraints are used in Optim. That was your question. I think Strata also.
Yeah, I was just kind of similar to what you were saying. I was just going to I don't know if it's accurate or not, just from my experience. I was just going to say that the way I see constraints is it's very it's complex, right? Constraints are system limitations, logic, limitations, and there are forms of attack vectors that are considered constraints also, right? So, excuse me. So the way I was looking at it was, or to Daniel's question, I think that that sort of the objective function is kind of like what you're trying to achieve, or the main ultimate objective, and then the constraints are just so multi-factor that I don't have a clear answer, but I was just trying to tie it back to some of the attack vectors, and it's not as simple as just saying it's one or the other. It's a multitude, and you have to, depending on the complexity of the dilemma that you're faced with or what you're trying to achieve, you're going to find different variations from system, societal, etc. But the main thing I was just going to tie it back to was the biggest realization for me was that what we are experiencing right now in this sort of the crypto asset space right now, right, in this blockchain network space, is kind of like, I've already gone to the next week's readings. I've done that all. And what kind of resonated with me, that I linked back to this article, was the fact that the stock market is no different than what we're experiencing right now. It is one big incentivized game. And the thing that really struck me in this article was a multi-skill perspective around understanding emergent properties that arise from relationships between agents, processes, and policies. And that, in my mind, like I won't go into anything that what I've done in the past, but for me, I think that was the biggest perspective, or the realization I had, that I think is really important for me moving forward. That's all.
No, those are very good points. And for me also, I think the multi-scale perspective is the most unique one. Like that was the one that stuck out to me, because I hadn't thought of things that way. I think even the purpose-driven tokens, we couldn't get to it, unfortunately. But that was something, if someone wants to add, because that was something we missed. Or Stella, if you don't have time, we can do the questions. That's on you.
Yeah, I think let's move on to the questions for now. So the people who cannot stay any longer, they at least get to go with us through this one before they leave, and then we can just stick around like the other time and discuss a little bit further. I hope that's okay for everyone. So, how did you guys feel about the questions? First one, how do the authors define the field cryptoeconomics in the paper? Anyone wants to take this one? Let's see who's in here. Hibiscus cultivar. I know you are also back to basics. I'm sure you know.
I had a quick look at it. So I thought it was number 2, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I thought it's not 2. Anyone else? We thought it was number 5, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually it's in the first part of the paper. This is where they are defining it, and I think it's is it in the summary even, or if is it just in the first chapter? I think it's
I would say it's number 5.
Yeah, number 5. Yeah.
yes, correct.
Okay. Yeah. Question 2. Let's go.
Yeah.
Isn't it 1 and 5?
Oh, 1, 2.
It's 5.
No, I mean, I don't think 1 would be right. I thought it was only 5 out of the options.
Yeah, because they are asking again, right? They're not asking about what we think. They're asking like, what do the authors define? So, and unless you have you found the first definition in the text, have you found this? Because I didn't.
Also, I would imagine token engineering is the design, verification, and optimization of token-based system, not crypto economics.
Yeah, that's true.
But either way, huh?
Okay.
If this was cultivar, I'm sorry. If you want to take the next one, maybe you get it right. Who knows? No, let's pick someone else. Let's pick Curious Rabbit. Question number 2. In the paper, the authors talk about emergent properties of economic systems. What do they mean?
So I don't have the answers in front of me, but it goes to what we were saying earlier, how complexity emerges from a set of simple rules. So when you have a variety of actors or stakeholders in a system, it's hard to account for all the ways that all the relationships and things that will emerge from it. So you constantly have this emergent property when a system involves multiple actors and a set of simple rules. I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean.
Should we open the PDF then? I'll send you a link.
Yeah, we can. We can, theoretically speaking.
I think it's called M1 something.
No, I don't have it downloaded.
Okay.
I think. Sorry, guys, but you have access to this, right? You guys should definitely download the file. It's on the 360 Articulate platform under exams, so please download it. So the answer is economic systems are often observed to have properties that are not directly attributable to agents, processes, and policies that make up the economic system. That's the answer.
Because. Also, these numbers might change, by the way, right? Like in the exam that we'll get where we start filling it. So yeah, don't remember it as only the number. Yeah.
Yeah, remember the content exactly. And this can be seen as the atomic unit of a system state. Why? Who wants to take this one? Kat, come on, Kat. We haven't heard you yet. Kat, you there? Want to take this one?
Yeah. I'm just trying to see where we are on the PDF still. Can you hear me, right?
It's the second page. Second page, third question.
Okay. Because they're programmed to steer automated collective action.
So we're
here, third.
Right?
Yeah.
This is the one. Can you read it, Kat, on my screen? Is it visible for you?
Yeah, and she mentioned
yeah.
First one, I think, but I thought it was the third one.
The third one.
But didn't we?
Oh yeah.
I thought we discussed.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We agreed on that. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. We agreed on the third one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there are multiple ones. I actually didn't find any multiple ones this time, but
No, me neither. I was a little surprised because last one we had like several multiple correct answers. And also,
Did anyone get multiple answers in this section?
we were debating for the next one if it had 2 correct answers for the next
Yeah.
one, but we weren't sure either. So the paper walks us through different perspectives to discuss cryptoeconomics, so in our case we called them lenses, allowing people from different backgrounds to have coherent conversations about this topic. How? I don't know. Rachel, you want to take this one? Try your luck.
Yeah, let me close the chat because I can't see that small text. All right. What can we do for particulars? I'll go with number 2. I don't know. I just scanned through it. I didn't really get a chance to read it in depth.
We were confused about this one. I think we said the first one, right?
We said the first one, but we were debating if this one shouldn't be also the case.
Yeah.
Right? This is like I can mark for you guys what we thought, right? It's like again, I'm just saying this. Like we don't get like the solutions provided, right? So we are not sure either. This is like to the best of our knowledge and how we perceived those questions to be answered. So it's not like we get the solutions and we're telling you the solutions, right? And so here you have it, right? This is everything so far. And the last one, according to the authors, can cryptoeconomic systems be fair? We thought yes, at least to the extent that the community of stakeholders accepted that a particular process or outcome is legitimate.
Can we just go back to the first question? Sorry, I missed that one. Like, what was the sort of consensus? Because I thought it was the second. Yeah. Because if you look at the definition in the paper, they're talking about that sort of hybrid between economics and comp sci. But I just wanted to understand the rationale, or what did we agree on?
That's quite fine. So if you look at this, right, they're asking how do the authors define the field cryptoeconomics in the paper, right?
And the first statement in the intro is the last option.
This is actually let me show you. So it's more. I think this is the paper that I. So if you go into the paper, right, into honestly just the first page, see how it says here the exact same phrase. So it's how they are defining it, how not how we think it should be defined, right? It's a different way of asking. Like I think this is super important, especially for module 1, as I've seen so far, right? They are not necessarily inquiring about our opinion, but rather they want us to make sure that we've read the papers actually, right? So they're asking specifically, like, how do the authors, how does Trent, how does Mike go, right? How does Sherman? So, just be careful when it comes to really answering, right?
Okay. Yeah, no, for sure. That's a good point. So it's essentially then the last answer there.
Yeah.
Okay, only one wrong then for me. Okay.
The fourth one, what did you think? Did you think it was 2 options? Or because that's where you're confused.
The last one, I thought it. Are you asking me? Sorry, Roman.
Yeah, I'm asking you. The second last one. The paper walks us through different perspectives. This one.
It can be both. It can be both, but I chose the first one.
Yeah, even I chose one actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could both be wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's discuss the homework too. Let's
just quickly go through the homework. So now everything works, right? Like, what is this? Like, okay, I'm like, it's for sure Adobe's fault, always. Okay, so the homework. Reflect on today's discussions, and we're going to keep discussing after this. Add to your notes if you caught some interesting thoughts today, right? You never know if, at some point you might need them again. work through module 1, chapter 3, which is Trends Web3 Sustainability Loop, which is like, for me personally, it was such an eye-opener when I read this a year ago or something. I think 8 months ago, something like this. Keep asking questions and use our Discord chat and Notion to the fullest, right? Like as we said, like we're gonna post all the little cute game links in there, so please play them, see for yourself. It's really great tools that Rohan selected for us to visually understand better how these different agents in a network are interacting. And the rule sets, that might be applying. Yeah. And that's it. Otherwise, we see you next week. Woohoo! But you can stick around for discussing.
Yeah, we can stick for a bit and discuss if anyone wants to. But the overall, yeah. Also, check the question. I put a lot of effort into it, so please give comments on whether I'm putting everything. Also, I'm thinking of starting a page, like putting a page up for book recommendations of people in this group. So it'll be very interesting. I feel like it's a great way to know each other, to know what kind of books we read. And yeah, so I'll just make a page where you can give me suggestions on the channel and I'll add them there.
I have a general question based on, go ahead. Go ahead, Strata. Or whoever.
Oh, that's a great idea. That's all.
So I have a general question about, I think we were in a different group and there was something about like VCs expect entrepreneurs to have like a core set of skills that they are. Yeah, okay, Stella.
That was me. I brought this up in Back to Basics. So funny.
Right.
I remembered this.
So Ro, I know you're going to hop into this too. So the question is, and I'm just using myself as an example. So I retired at 33, not because I'm like independently wealthy or anything like that. It's due to medical reasons. And so, but my background is in computer science and mostly education. And then on the IT side, it's more on the hardware side versus software. So, and like, but I've studied philosophy and everything else. So how does somebody who's like broad, like, how would they fill that gap, that gap that VCs see? And, I don't know, maybe I'm being too personal or self-centered on this question, but I'm sure there are other people out there that are kind of like, they're good at various areas, but they're not a master of any of them.
Well, I had this thought too, because I for some reason that like really stuck with me. That like the idea of being good at a lot of things, but like master of none. And I think I actually disagree with the idea that you have to be really, really good at one thing. And I actually don't think that makes for a good CEO. I think a good CEO is someone who understands the landscape and understands enough to know who to hire, and someone who is better at something that they are, and to be able to trust them in that area. I think that actually makes for a really great fit for someone who's running a company. Like you can be good at managing a lot of things or understanding a lot of things,
Sorry, can I answer? Because I brought this up. I think it's a bit of both, right? I think it's right what Michael and Trent keep bringing up, that, this is a call to all polymaths, which actually is what you have been describing, Kat. So I think it is important that we are able to, switch perspectives or turn the kaleidoscope, right? And see everything to multiple eyes at once. But then I think it's also important, as we, Web3 is not yet fully established, and we still need Web 2 to exist, right? Like we're not completely free from it. It's not like there is a transition area and we are like in the middle of that. So I think it's really important that you still also have like a hard skill. If you don't have a hard skill, how are you able to understand certain things, right? Like for some understanding, it is necessarily to understand how much work, for example, is involved in, like getting from this theory or this idea to actual implementation. And I think if you don't own like a hard skill, at least in one area, it makes it really, really hard to understand that part, you know. And this is actually something that has been happening a lot to actually my father is he's a he's a let's say he's an IT manager, right? Let's just say he's an IT man, whatever. And he had this trouble with a lot of CEOs, right? A lot of CEOs come like from like a lot of theoretic fields, right? But don't really have a hard skill in any area. And so they want a certain thing, but they don't understand how much money and how much time it takes to implement it. So they want it yesterday, and they rather want it like all squishy squashed, and main thing, it is like happening. And then, you know, it's happening, but it's happening in a not very safe way. And then, you know, a lot of bad things keep happening, right? And then they're surprised that everything starts to cost more. So I think this is also why, but especially in Web3, I think what I've seen is like a lot of people talking but not doing, right? And that is something that the VCs really got upset with. And I think like if you are after VC money, then this is probably something you have to listen to in a sense, you know? Like, I mean, Kat, you know, we're not after VC money. We don't necessarily have to listen to it. But I thought, for me, it was a motivation actually to start learning all of this.
Not we should say not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. True. Okay. Sorry,
But
Rohan.
isn't this where
Rachel.
Isn't this where consulting can, like, you could be like, you know, like, kind of like what Hibiscus says, jack of all trades but master of none. But isn't that where like consulting would come in for these entrepreneurs and these CEOs versus having to attain that hard skill? I know this is a debate, so it's, you know, open discourse, so nobody's right or wrong.
I mean, I think they brought it also up in the video discussion, right? Both of them said they mentioned this one project they had been asked to work on, and those guys, they thought it was good enough to have one crypto engineer or a token economics engineer in there and one, you know, economist, and then, you know, the whole thing is solved, right? I think that is definitely not it. You need discussion, you need friction, and it only can come if you're being criticized. Like, actually, Kat and I had this just yesterday, and Rohan was listening in, right? Like, she was not happy with something that I made, and that's okay, right? We need this. Like, if we don't have these kind of discussions, how can anything, like, beyond what we already know come out of it? You know, there's just no way. So... yeah, sorry, Rohan, you go. Sorry, I could talk on this forever.
I mean, for me, Kat, do you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, I think that there's actually a few different ways to look at this, because being multidisciplinary can be what you're good at, I think. It can be the thing that you're really, really good at. And I think that that's important and really valid. And I think that when we're talking about like, VCs or whoever thinking that, you know, there's maybe not enough of a hard skill. Maybe it's not about a person, but just about understanding that the organization itself needs to have, instead of one XYZ engineer or one economist, and depending on what the startup or company or DAO is, I think it just depends on like what the focus of the goal of the DAO or the product, and that it's just about like having one or two more people on that team that's able to focus on that thing, even if the person running it, like as long as they understand that there needs to be more of a weight in that area for that information. You know, it's just kind of like distributing that.
Yeah, because there are generalists, like, because that is a role that in a lot of startups that like they hire generalists who basically, or like founders office is what they call it here, where they're good at operations, they're good at like understanding tech, product management, everything, like, and they don't have a clear skill set where they are like the best at it, but it clearly helps a lot of startups to have generalists on board. And I think a founder kind of has to be one. But I think it comes down to, there's a lot of times you fall into the trap of just, if you're like the jack of all trades or master of none kind of thing, I feel like if you're a master of none, it's not about being a master of anything, but you still need to be competent. You can't just be like, hey, I can also do this. At the end of the day, you kind of have to be competent with your skills, no matter which level you're at. Like, I think that is also an important point to make, that a lot of times people fall into the trap of, hey, I can also paint, I can also do this, whatever. But if you're not competent in anything, then I don't know. That's
Ron, can I jump on your thread there? So I don't know what the conversation was, but where it's going, it's pretty interesting. So the one thing that really struck out to me in all these readings, like I have a multidisciplinary background. I got a computer science with an economics and a business degree. And, I used to pride myself on being that sort of generalist. But as I've evolved in my career, I've realized that I enjoy more of concentration. And when we started down this journey in Canada, the whole thing that Trent talked about was the IE engineering ring that they wear that was forged out of that bridge. The sort of notion is that it's forged out of the bridge, the Tacoma Bridge that collapsed. For me, startups and all these organizations, right? There's a purpose for generalists, but I feel that what we lack more of is the deep subject matter experts having a seat at the table and being valued for their seat and contribution at the table. Because a lot of the consequences of whatever we've done or the systems we've created can sometimes be attributed back to lack of foresight, lack of strategic thinking on what are those first, second, and third degree consequences of our actions. So the reason why I like token engineering is that, yes, it gives me breadth and I can tap into so many different parts of my background, but it will also allow me to focus on one concentration. And, at the end of the day, it's my thoughts, but whatever company or startup I build, I bet you dollars to donuts, I'm going to have equal representation from folks around the table, and they're all going to have an equal voice. The biggest fault of many startups and the startups that I've been a part of is that it's a popularity contest. Somebody throws out an idea, everybody jumps on that. Oh, that sounds good. I don't want to contradict Joe or Shally or whatever, right? At the end of the day, we need to create structures and organizations that are based off of a meritocracy versus an oligopoly of certain individuals and hierarchies within systems. So that's where I think the fundamental flaws are from a philosophical perspective and just a business management perspective, right? I've spoken to I won't even go like Stella. Like I've spoken to multiple CEOs and I've worked with some of them very closely in their boards. And at the end of the day, sometimes I feel like I wish I could shake some of them to say, hey, you're not listening. You're not listening. So that's just I thought the conversation was going really good and I thought I'd just chime in.
That's very interesting, yeah.
So may I jump on this one and just ask a question back out of my own selfishness. How do you think, if you're the founder of a project, like how do you make people think of you less as the founder as you progress towards, a more flattened hierarchy? Because, so for example, right, I bring up this one thing. Everyone says, hey, great, cool, we love it, right? Then there is one person in the group who says, hey, that's actually not so great, and I don't really know what to do with this. And then another person from the group suddenly comes in and says, yeah, I also didn't know what to do with this, right? So you can tell that they have been avoiding to tell you their real feelings or their real thoughts just because of the level of hierarchy. So how do you start, by time, eradicating that? Do you have any advice?
I have. Are you asking me, Stella, to give you my experience?
Yeah, Strata.
Yeah. I'll give you my experience. Blind voting. Blind voting is what I've done in the past. So essentially, what I've done is that I've said, look, folks, you know what? Because I can have a big personality in the room. I have a very big presence when I go into some rooms. And what I've often done is said, look, here's the actual use case. Here's the problem that we're trying to solve. Okay, everybody, you have these sticky notes. I want you to write on a piece of paper what your thoughts or ideas are. That's it. You fold it up, we put it into a box, and then another person picks it out one by one. And somebody can say, this is Sally's handwriting, this is Joe's handwriting, this is, whatever, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, then what I've done in the past to avoid, because you know what, it's very hard, Stella. hierarchy is just like, we look in society, we look in like religion, we look in caste, and in all, there's always hierarchy. So the way that I've gone around that in any of the conversations I've had to do is this sort of, I call it the blind voting method. And we take it out, and then what I've done is that even we've taken them, we stuck them on the wall, all of the comments, and then we've just said, hey, people, vote on them. Here's some stickies, just vote, just tell me. And the more votes that we had on one particular solution or whatever the situation was, the higher votes we had, right? Those were sometimes where we focused. But here's the tricky thing around voting. The voting also has a fatal flaw in it, because when you see your friend voting on something, sometimes you're like, oh, I'm going to vote there too. You know what I mean? Because they're smart, they might know something. So what I've really done is I've stopped the voting, and I just take those ideas and we talk about them. We try and flesh them out further, because that's how you'll get those true, real opinions about ideas. I don't know if that makes sense, or if that make, does that resonate with other people?
Yeah, you're based. Yeah. The question basically is, how do you avoid, or how do you get out of the hold of groupthink? How do you incentivize for more like just keeping to your own initial gut feeling, really, than to whatever the person next to you is saying, or whatever you think should be swayed a certain way.
I actually
that makes a lot of sense.
the ideas the ideas that have really interested me in the space are like things like quadratic voting and stuff. It doesn't really, I mean, it's a side conversation, but putting money where your mouth is not in these situations, but I'm saying is a very interesting way to solve this problem of voting. So there's a beautiful article by Vitalik, by the way, which explains the problems with pure democracies where everyone has the same say, because the problem also is that some people might care a lot about something, but they have the same say as someone who doesn't care about the point at all, but they have the same vote at the end of the day. And that's a flaw. While one person, $1 voting systems where you put your money has a flaw, because there are some people who are damn rich and they can just get away with putting more money in things. So they had found a middle ground through the quadratic funding systems. So in that whole area of literature is very rich with ideas about voting systems and how we can change parts of them. Yeah.
That's what.
Before I go,
Yeah, go ahead, Curious. Go ahead.
Thanks, bro. Just because I wanna get going. So Stella, this is not the first person to ask this question. This has been thought about. I think it was Daniel Kahneman or something, and he's the one that kind of advocates a bit what Stratus said is. You hear the very best leaders, when they go into rooms now, they make sure that their opinion is not the first one, because of the way it primes the mind for everybody else. So it's how do you get unfiltered, unprimed opinion from others? And there are techniques and tools for this. If anything, it just requires a little bit of research. There are a ton of techniques and tools for collaboration. There's an app called Liberating Structures that you can use for generating insights within a group. Let me write that down. The beautiful thing,
guys, thank you.
And that's an app. It's an app that has a bunch.
Sorry, you're talking about the theory, Daniel, is the Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
Yeah. So the thing is a lot of our questions have been thought of by amazing thinkers beforehand. It's just hard to reconcile all the wisdom from the past and use it right now. But yeah, the answers are out there.
Thank you for sharing, both of you.
I'm curious.
Just quickly saying, Strada, thank you. You didn't miss the question. And yes, please, Rachel, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm curious on this whole thing about priming people's responses to certain situations is for instance, you're having a conversation in chat. I think it's kind of that just popped into my mind as far as priming people's answers, where people share their ideas and their thoughts, and maybe people are, I don't know, scared or whatever, maybe not scared, but they don't want to share their opposing opinion. I don't know if I wouldn't say it's intimidation or anything like that, but maybe they're just shy or, introverts, whatever it may be. And I'd also like to add that, like in Cardano, I'm working with the Catalyst, with a team people that are working on Catalyst over there, Project Catalyst, and that's a very important feature is that we have blind voting or anonymous voting, to where you're not influenced by your peers as far as the direction of your vote. So I think that's an excellent point, and I concur with Stella. You didn't miss the topic, Strata.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Sometimes I do, because I'm thinking of the other things. I have ADHD, so I'm always thinking of different things, right? So sometimes it's not the first time if I have. So thanks, brother.
No, but you really didn't. All good. I really appreciate this advice, because I'm a baby as a founder, you know. I'm still really learning, and discussing these things with you, it's really a privilege. So thank you. So I guess we're at the top of the hour. Anyone wants to? Lutra also has to go now. I think this comes not as a
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks so much for everything. Really looking forward to the next week.
Yeah. Also, please give your book recommendations on the channel. I'll add it on the Notion page. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great presentation, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got my own reading list, Rohan.
Oh,
So I don't know if you want. Yeah, I don't know how relative it is to this, but I think a lot of it, all of it deals with tokenomics in some form or fashion.
Oh no, so I meant actually the reading list could be even what you personally like, because I would like to know what people out here read, yeah.
So like,
Wait.
I don't know, some of Nietzsche's finest works.
Absolutely anything. Like I'll make a template for everybody so it's easier for everyone to follow. But it'd be nice to know like what you guys read, that's why. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Awesome. Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Can I also include this?
Oh,
Can I
wow.
include this?
Oh, that's so cool.
Or Geiger's picture book.
I have my books out there. But I don't want to get up because I'm wearing shorts, and I think I'll be. Is it still being recorded? I hope not. Yeah, I shouldn't get up for sure.
Yeah. No, I think today.
I
was
appreciate
really
the
nice.
session, everyone.
Yes.
Thank
Okay, sure. See you guys then. Bye.